Howdy folks, we're looking at Edge Magazine issue 26, released November 1995, and discussing the future of interactive entertainment. And another rather dreary cover for Edge Magazine in the mid-90s. But what's cool is that if you look closely, you'll see that the previous Edge is shown in this. This is not in-game coverage. But apparently the makers of Fade to Black actually took the time to render this image for Edge. So, Fade to Black, the sequel to Flashback. I didn't think either games were that special, but Edge seems to like it. And we're going to see a lot of 3DO. So let's take a look at the inside. So, we have this arrow. What does it end up going to? There's no mention of the word Edge, right? That's a first. Oh no, if you look closely, you see Edge written in the target. Okay, so what about the opening column? What was that about again? Talk about the PlayStation coming out. What's the Nintendo 64 going to do? Nothing interesting here. The future is almost here. I love that, though. I wish they did that again. Okay, so strategy games will be discussed. Like I said, 3DO. Phil Harrison. Big interview with him. Some reviews for the Yoshi's Island. Look at Super Mario RPG and Quake. Yes, that's Quake. Looked a bit different during the alpha. Okay, so ECTS just occurred. And pretty much more of the same, just like every ECTS is. I don't know. I don't go to these events anymore. But back in the day, yeah, it wasn't that special because you already had the news from the American conferences. So yes, Saturn games would be finding its way to the personal computer thanks to NVIDIA. Yeah, but not a big deal, right? I mean, who played Daytona on the PC? There's a funny advertisement for Saturn on the television, which turns out to be a dream of sorts. No, it was just a game. Alright, so another conference, SIGGRAPH, apparently getting even bigger. Edge dedicating another 2 pages to it, and the latest cutting edge on graphics possibilities, which people cared about back then. We see here an image of what would be Final Fantasy VII, but at the time people thought it was going to be for the Nintendo 64. Windows 95 finally being released, and it changed the use of PCs forever. Finally, I mean, it took me a while to actually like Windows 95 because I was used to the Mac, and Windows 95 felt slow to me, so I actually preferred using DOS for a while. But by 98, I jumped ship, and you had to use DOS prompt quite often anyway, especially for games. The DVD's shaping up. In this case, a ceasefire because all the different companies vying for the universal standard to play movies on a disc. But close to the end of that war. Yeah, with the CDI, you could use the internet now. Woo! So that was getting interesting. So here, the Nomad, big flop for Saturn. Another one for Sega. Another one. In the late '90s, most of the arcade games became 3D. So like games like Fighting Vipers and Soul Edge. I don't remember any character having an axe. That's interesting. This is a fictional book about the future of what was it again? It's kind of dystopian, but I forgot their hook. Anyhow, Siberia. Okay, so the letters, and one reader complaining that Edge is too positive about the PlayStation and that it might as well be called PlayStation Power, the magazine. No, that's rather cynical. Somebody's saying, yeah, well, Sony's using guerrilla tactics, with their cheap pricing. Yeah, again, somebody's saying, hey, what about the Mac? So, and another person concerned about, what about the European versions of the Saturn PlayStation? How good do they look? Okay, the preview section. Quake in a very early build. Look how blue it all looks. Quake must be the brownest game ever made. This looks like the opening part. We see a dragon flying. That didn't make it to the game. So back then it seemed to be much more like a medieval game, but I think they kind of, they had all the graphics done and they were like, hey, we still have to make a game out of this. And they were like, okay, we'll just use the assets we have and the rest will be like Doom because that's fun. And that's why Quake 1 is a lot like Doom. Quake 2 is even more like Doom. So a lot of talk about the importance of running fast on a 486 or Pentium. Also talk about other games by ID, in this case Heretic. No, yeah, Hexen. Hexen would follow up Heretic, and I liked Hexen 2 quite a lot, which used the Quake 1 engine. More early images of Quake 1. Biohazard, aka Resident Evil. Already looking special at the time. That would go on to become a big hit for Capcom. Super Mario RPG, not quite a big hit as I would expect looking back. I guess the Super Nintendo just wasn't ready for too many RPGs at the time. There were a lot of RPGs in the mid-90s. And I loved Paper Mario. I didn't like this game that much, actually. Maybe that's it. Just wasn't that good. Paper Mario and Mario and Luigi, the first ones, were a lot of fun. I loved that. And of course, there's 1,000 Year Door, which apparently is really good, but I've never played that one. I did play it, but didn't get that far. And yeah, another hit for the Super Nintendo, though, coming out in 1996. So, Burn Cycle. Getting some commercials. Hey, Toshinden 2, I don't know anything about this game. It does look better than Part 1, and I guess that's all there is to say, right? Another 3D fighting game for the PlayStation. Dark Savior, the sequel to, what was it called again? The Mega Drive Zelda-like game. Landstalker, of course. This game wasn't as good. So, another disappointment for Saturn coming up. And Legend of Thor. I don't think this was better than the Mega Drive version either. So here we have action RPGs. Not adding much to the Saturn and actually being less good. It's a shame. If you asked me in 1995 which system would come out top, the PlayStation or Saturn, well, I would have said Saturn because Sega's history of making quality games and having quality games on their system, but Shinobi, Landstalker, a lot of games just turned out to be subpar on the Saturn, so that hurt the system. Fighting Vipers, a virtual fighter with armor, I remember, and cool looking characters. Didn't really catch on that much. Also made by Sega. Still a good game though. Okay, so here's an article about strategy games, and this article's all over the place. First of all, there are two threads going on at the same time. We have a thread basically describing the somewhat of the history. It doesn't go far back. Games like Empire for the Play-Doh mainframe, they're not discussed. But it does go back to the early 80s, I think. So, yeah, of course, the Civilization and SimCity. Those are the two big ones in the early 90s. And there are also articles to the left and the right discussing some important games at the time, like CivNet, which is, I believe it was Civilization, but, you could play it against each other, which was something lacking in the original Civilization. And XCOM 3, which would be released, I don't know if that was ever released, but you had UFO, an Enemy Unknown, and then after that you had XCOM Terror from the Deep. I never played these games in the 90s, but they had a cult following, and nowadays you have XCOM, which is apparently really big. So here we see some of the main people making strategy games. Sid Meier, Peter Molyneux, and what's his name again? Bill Wright, of course. Mr. Sim. And The Settlers, never reviewed in Edge Magazine here. They're talking about The Settlers 2. Very positive. And this article discusses the AI, how it works in some games, how do these games keep interesting. So here's a look at some other games. Even RPGs are mentioned for some reason. I guess they're strategic. Okay, we're going to try to do this whole video in one segment, because then I can now that I've registered to YouTube, I can make videos that are half an hour long. So we keep going. M2. I'm getting tired of these articles, and there was nothing here that made me go, ooh, that's interesting. So yeah, a lot of promises. Nothing coming to fruition. I love the first question. How are you doing? Made any money yet? And Trip is very positive about how 3DO has been doing better in the last year, but it's still not enough, of course. Blade Force was quite hype at the time, and it would be reviewed in the next issue. Killing Time, that was discussed last time. It's like Doom, but with puzzle elements and horror. And I don't know, Fighting Nightmares. They say it looks like a flight sim from the early 90s. Well, I guess it says enough. Here's some graphs showing that 3DO's net worth has everything to do with hype, and during May there are these peaks in their stock value because of the E3. Alright. Oh, this interview goes on for quite a while. Deathkeep, Poet. Poet was kind of cool, but and of course talking about the M2, but yeah. He's very vague about it. There's talk about the M2 becoming a coin op, and that I believe that the M2 technology was used for some like vending machines or something. Something kind of sad. Maybe silly games in the pub games. But the M2 technology was used for something, but not for video game consoles. Okay, so here's a classic, Yoshi's Island. Kind of a weird picture to use the left. Looks very red, but yeah. Awesome graphic design. I talked about it in earlier videos. Edge is completely enthusiastic about it. All the silly effects, all the charisma. Every place in this game is interesting. You want to remember it. I love this boss where the whole stage runs around. I sometimes I just went through the level as a kid just to play against this boss because it was such a cool effect that the whole background would turn, running around this little planet. This fellow kept getting. His pants kept going higher and higher, but some bosses just kept getting bigger and bigger, or smaller and smaller. It was fantastic. I can never find the last red coin in level 5, the bonus stage in World 5. I could probably find it now with the help of the internet, but I got 99% of the game completed. Oh well. Hey, Edge gives it a 9, rightfully so. Destruction Derby. Yeah, the racing game where there's a lot of crashes, and it did pretty well, but it wasn't that special as a racing game, and Edge gives it a 7. So still a lot of cars going on at the same time, something Gran Turismo wouldn't have. Fade to Black, the cover game, getting a 9. So I've never played this game, but I looked into it, and it got good reviews back then. I think Edge was a bit higher than the rest. And the thing is, this was kind of like a 3D version of Flashback, fair enough, with annoying cutscenes whenever you died. And but worst of all, the controls are just horrible. Typically 3D games in the mid-90s had horrible controls, and this is one of them. Great example. Graphics aren't that too good, but Edge really just likes the variety of the game. How you're immersed in the game or something. I don't know. I guess it is a special world. I did like Out of This World, even though I can't stand other games that use canned control schemes or have really bad controls. But yeah, Out of This World was fine. So maybe I should check out Flashback, see if that's my kind of thing. And but Fade to Black, I don't know. Edge gives it a 9. That's a really high grade for a game that also sold well on the PlayStation 1. Chrono Trigger. Oh, Edge. You just don't get RPGs, do you? They gave the game a 7. Can you believe that? This should have been a 9, maybe even a 10. And there's hardly any talk about what makes the game good. They barely mention the time travel aspect. And they say it's rather lightweight compared to Final Fantasy VI. Yeah, they're just saying that, it's if you're into RPGs, you would like this. That's all they say in this review. Kind of sad. A lot of fantastic moments in this world. A snappy, fun fighting system. And it's just so cool to go back in time and change things. A lot of different endings, even though I thought a lot of the endings were kind of silly. It's not like it really changed things. You just got different cinematics because you made certain choices. But yeah, one of the classic RPGs, and Edge doesn't get it. Bug! Exclamation point. Another pretty looking 2D platforming game for the Saturn. And it had 3D elements, but they weren't very well used. And yeah, sticking to a 2D plane, it's nothing special, so Edge gives it a 6. Zero Divide. I had completely forgotten about this game, but this is a robot versus robot fighting game for the PlayStation 1. It looks pretty cool, and the robots actually have quite a lot of personality, and Edge gives it a 7. So they say it just can't boast the long-term playing potential of Tekken. I don't know, I didn't think Tekken was that good either, but whatever. Okay, on to another classic, but this time from the past, Jet Set Willy. You probably, I don't think most people know this game. Released in 1984, so this was before Super Mario Brothers. And it didn't play as well as Super Mario Brothers, don't get me wrong. But it really was a platform adventure game, very difficult. And for the ZX Spectrum. And yeah, each room was quite a difficult puzzle. I don't think it's that much fun to play anymore. Like Super Mario Brothers is fun to play still, but Jet Set Willy, it's not very rewarding anymore. Trying to get to the end, but when you think, it's kind of funny to think that this game was made by probably one person at home in England, and yeah, it was kind of before its time. I mean, it was released the year before Super Mario Brothers, and before that you had Manic Miner, which was a more simple version of this game, oh god, I can never remember the original platform game, not Load Runner, but the other one. Anyhow, so yeah, old school platforming. After this, Super Mario Brothers would change everything for the better, but this was the best before that game was released. And I bet the Edge team played it a lot as a kid. So, all these ads. Hey, we'll see this guy quite often. Is he still at it? I think so. Phil Harrison looking really cool with his black disc. And what kind of joypad is this? Of course, he's very positive with the PlayStation, but he has every right to be that because it was going extremely well. It was a very polished product when it was released. And I liked one of his answers. What solid reasons are there now for buying a PlayStation? What's to stop people waiting for the Ultra 64? And he just mentions, quality games. There are 7 good reasons between now and the end of 1995. Battle Arena Toshiden, I don't know about that one, but you get the idea. And he criticizes M2. and 3DO because it's just too much to pull off. He also talks about how casuals got into the PlayStation. He mentions a lot of people who used to pop in a quarter in arcade machines. They lost interest in video games during the 16-bit era, but now they see the PlayStation and they're coming back, and he's very proud of that. So, he also talks about how friendly PlayStation has been for developers, sharing the tools, making it easy to program for the system, and which the Saturn didn't do as much, and that was another reason why PlayStation won. So, only 20 minutes in, and we're nearing the end. The Q&A. Yeah, maybe you want to take a look, find something fun to read about. Talk about the Ultra 64 having high resolution. But, yeah, technical questions for readers. I'm surprised they're still doing Q&A in this magazine. And the next time, we're going to see Sega Rally on the next cover. And they're going to talk about the AM3 coin-op division. And nothing about the Model 3, though. So, I only know AM3 from Sega Rally. Who knows, maybe we'll find out about some other games they were making. And that is Edge Magazine, issue, I forgot it already, 26. Let's open it up, see what the full image is like. Yeah, you start the game locked up in a cell. You did get your Edge, apparently. Okay, see you around. Next time we'll be in December 1995, issue 27. And till then.